doing some research for an upcoming interview I'm going to do on my channel. And as it stands now on my channel, everybody that I've interviewed, with the exception of Billy Dior, aka Billy McCarthy from DeMalls, everybody else has been a friend, somebody I've known from the past. I've known their story. I'm able to, kind of say, hey, remember this, remember that. And, being an interviewer is a whole nother skill than doing these YouTube videos, knowing about somebody's life, being ready to ask questions, having the right questions, being able to listen, knowing when the pause is coming up. And when that pause comes in, dead air, whether you're on a band and you're playing in your local bar or on a huge stage or in conversation or in a sales pitch, dead air is not good. So you don't want to have long pauses of nothing going on. In doing my research for an upcoming interview that I've got, I'm reading Off the Rails by Rudy Sarzo, and it is an excellent book. It is an excellent book. And man, it really gives so much insight into the early, Blizzard of Oz, Ozzy Osbourne and Randy Rhoads and, Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo and, the relationship with, Sharon Osbourne as the manager or road manager at that time was still Don Arden, still, kind of leading things from above. And once again, the keyboard player, Lindsey, is the guy that I'm reading about in this book. Is it Lindsey Graham? Let me know in the comments. I know Don Airey is also, a guy that played with Ozzy, but so far in this book, it's this guy, Lindsey, kind of behind the scenes playing keyboards. So, it's a fascinating read, man. And there's so many times where I've just went, holy, what? First of all, man, who would have thought, Ozzy now and what a big solo star he is. And granted, he's no longer able to tour. And man, it's so very understandable. But man, the idea of being off the rails, back then, look, the fact of the matter is at that point in time, Ozzy had done a long stint in Black Sabbath. And for all intensive purposes, he shouldn't have had to go back on the road and build something from the beginning, like he did with this solo band. But, I think Ozzy, was at a point in his career where he wasn't capable of doing something else. I mean, once you've gone and reached the top of the mountain like they did with Black Sabbath and become this huge act and sold all these records and experienced all that, you don't ever want to go back to a normal life of just, the drudgery of everyday life. It would be impossible to exist. I can't imagine, going and having to do something else. It just becomes this unimaginable thought. No one on your job is going to have any idea of what you did before. They're not going to understand what you've been through. And one of the biggest revelations that just blew me away is, Ozzy was struggling even back then, was struggling with his sobriety, struggling with the demand to go on. He would get these panic attacks before he would go on stage. I can't go on. I can't do it. I can't do it. My voice is shot. I can't, and they would literally have to, people would threaten him to go out on stage. You get out there right now, and there was a moment of clarity where Rudy Sarzo sat down with Ozzy, and Ozzy had talked about how he had, joined a band to escape the mundane, drudgery of a factory job. He grew up in a factory town where the smokestacks in the factory and people would go in, day out, and work their fingers to the bone in a factory. And it seemed like a very dreary existence. And so to escape that, they started a band. They started a band called Black Sabbath. And they did it. They rose from the clubs and from the pubs and got a record deal and went on to become legends of the heavy metal scene. But man, the business and the economics of it and all that, it didn't set them up for life. Most people would be happy with, having a Black Sabbath or whatever. And I'm set now. I'm going to just kick back and we'll get together in a couple of years and do a reunion tour. I don't think Ozzy was in that position at all. They talk about in this book how at one time he got off the road and he knew the crew guys and everybody was stoked and had money. And he went to the business manager and said, hey, where's my check? Where's my money? And he says, oh, I'm sorry, mate. We don't have any more money. Here, take this car. And he threw him the keys to an exotic, very expensive car. I don't remember whether it was a Jaguar, I think it was what it was. He threw him the keys. And he's like, well, I better take this because it's the only thing I'm going to get, And so he took the keys. Well, then he later found out on his statement that they wrote that off out of his pay. So he paid for it. He paid for the car. So it wasn't even like he was being given anything. He had to pay for that. So, it's just crazy. And so he joined Black Sabbath and did all that to escape the drudgery. But now he's out on the road as a solo artist. And he's starting to realize he's still having to go into that sweatshop. Each day he's still going into a factory. It's not a factory that's making nuts and bolts, but it's a factory that's making music and putting on performances. And he still have to trudge in each day and still do it. And he's realizing he's still chained to a job. He's still a slave to the system. Man, he's literally in tears thinking about he thought he had escaped. He thought he would finding a way out of a situation that seemed a very dire existence. And now he realizes he's just trapped. He's just trapped by the life that he's created. It becomes very difficult. You've got to figure, when this, band was starting up, Ozzy was, starting to hit 30, man, by rock star years. People look at you when you were 30, when you were 20 and you looked at 30-year-olds, you thought, oh man, that's an old guy. You would probably frown when you were 20 having 30-year-olds in your band, and the unique perspective of Rudy's parents when they went to see a show, and they're like, well, we really liked the guitar player and he played really well and really good melodies, and the drummer was so incredible, and you did a great job, Rudy, of performing. But the singer just kind of wandered around like he didn't know where he was, and they didn't get it because they didn't know Black Sabbath. They were Cuban immigrants, and all they could do is judge the performance by equal standards. All they could do was judge the performance as they saw it So they didn't see it from the lens of, oh, this is Ozzy Osbourne from Black Sabbath, and now he's got this new band. They just saw it from, what is this group and who is this strange guy fronting this band? I mean, I always thought when I saw Ozzy, he's middle-aged. He doesn't look like he's in the greatest of shape. I always kind of wondered, like, what is the appeal here? What is the appeal? He's got this, kind of voice that just kind of cuts through a mix. But I think, it's definitely, he definitely appealed to the common man. He definitely, when he went out there, he had the same emotions, the same feelings of wanting to blow off steam. Ozzy would always urge the crowd to go crazy. I want to see everybody go crazy, and I think that is what a kid, when they go to a concert, that's what kids wanted to see. I know teenage boys, you'd want to go see that crazy guy. I want to go see Ozzy, and I knew the guys that would scribble Ozzy on their notebooks. I wasn't an Ozzy guy. I bought one Ozzy album and certainly appreciated Randy Rhoads and his incredible playing. But man, there's so many revelations in this book. And of course, when I start reading this and I start hearing him say that he was trapped. He was trapped by the fame. He was trapped by the job, and it can't help but bring back memories of when I was out on the road. And these guys kept a normal tour schedule, and believe it or not, they had a lot of cancellations early on, and they were playing small venues. They were playing small, sometimes they'd play 6,000 seat venues and there'd be 1,200 people there, 1,200 people to see Randy Rhoads. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that you're playing for empty arenas? There was one time a DJ was coming to see them, and they were worried because there was very poor ticket sales. And so they thought, oh, well, just everybody please perform very hard, and maybe Ozzy will see you guys really trying, and he'll put forth the effort because we don't want a bad review. And Ozzy went out drinking with the DJ, and the DJ ended up so drunk he passed out during the performance. So he didn't even see that there was not a packed house. You would think back in those days that, oh man, they must have been playing packed houses and blowing people away. But man, the critics were slamming them. The critics were, everybody was, tuned to new wave and punk rock and all that. So they were considered dinosaurs. Hard rock was considered a dinosaur thing in the times of Van Halen and Ozzy. But man, I can't help but relate to these stories and there's grind of the schedule. And man, I can even say that, when I was out on the road, man, our schedule was brutal. You're talking like 5 days in a row, sometimes 6 days in a row with radio and stuff, during the day, and boom, show after show after show. And I remember going to the tour manager and saying, man, I'm not sure my voice is going to hold out. And that was a problem with Ozzy is, you get so hyped up after these shows, you get so jacked up. And man, it's like you get on the bus and you just want to pound beers and you're just pumped, and there's just no way you can just crawl in your bunk and go immediately to sleep and rest for the show. I know there's a lot of choir boys out there on the road that maybe can do that, but man, that was not me. I would come off that stage and just be so pumped, and it's just like all that energy's got to go somewhere. And so you'd be on that front lounge listening to music or watching, what was that metal show on VH1, and we'd be drinking beers and everybody'd be laughing and people would be, pulling pranks on people and all this stuff. And it became so hard to not do that every night. And when you would try to not do it, then you'd get in your bunk and you couldn't go to sleep because the bus is bumping and it's just a confined thing. There's another thing they said in here is, sleeping in your bunk is not the same as sleeping in a comfortable bed, sleeping in a hotel room. So, all of these things, man, and like I said, I had gone to the tour manager and said, man, I don't know if my voice is going to hold out, dude. 5, 6 shows in a row, and then you've got me singing, 2 hours at sound check, and, well, this is normal. This is normal. And I'm thinking like, dude, I'm reading in this book, and they're saying, we do 2 shows and a day off, and then 3 shows and a day off. So it was like a 5-day kind of like cycle that would constantly repeat. And I go, okay, well, that's, having a day off, man, is a huge thing, because, you're dealing with, potential food illnesses, and you're exposed to so many people. So there's germs floating around all the time, and allergies, and, the bus air conditioning drying out your voice, and not just that, but the wear and tear of the road. And it does become a grind. That thing that you loved, that thing that you wanted to do so much, becomes this grind and this perpetual thing. And yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's great to feel the adulation of a crowd, and the wink of the town beauty queen, and the frivolity of the whole thing, and the after show celebrations, and and all that. But man, it comes a point in time where you're like, when is this ride gonna stop? When am I gonna get a break? And the other thing, Ozzy would go home, and every time he came home, the wife would yell at him, take out the trash. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. And you're a stranger. You come home and you're a stranger. Every time I would come home, I would be a stranger, and everything would I'd have to start from zero again. And meanwhile, they have no idea that I've just gone out and had, 10,000 people screaming for 4 nights in a row, cheering me on, and everybody's happy to see you and all that. And you come home and you're just the same old schlub that you were before all of it started. That could become a very difficult thing. You start wanting to get back on that bus, because you're like, man, the crowds out there love me, and I get home, I'm just a piece of crap, and it becomes this cycle this merry-go-round that you can't get off.